Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And this is part number 3, where we go in to install the remaining part of the wiring loom on the back of the tractor. In other words, the wires go into the blinkers and the lights on the rear fenders. I know they are not installed yet, but we can prepare the wiring loom. Now before we do so, I owe you some explanations on some questions and comments that people made on part 1 and part 2. And one observing subscriber commented that I have not installed the heating system or the preheating. Now my tractor doesn't have a preheating system. Normally you would have a glow spark plug in the intake manifold to preheat the air before the air goes into the diesel engine. Mine doesn't have that one. Now if you do have that on your tractor, then by all means install that additional circuit. And that's pretty easy. You can use your key contact, and that typically would have a third position. So you would have normal contact, starter, and preheat. Now be careful. It all depends on how much current you're going to draw, because you may burn out at that contact. So you might have to use a relay. You might as well use a separate push button for that, either with or without a relay. So that was one of the comments, and I think that was a very good comment. But then again, it did not apply to my tractor. And as you remember, when I did my video, I said, like, this is how I'm doing my tractor, and yours might be slightly different. Another comment was, why did I not put my lights behind the contact key? In other words, I need to put the contact key to contact before I can actually turn on the lights. So whenever you stop the tractor, there's no risk of leaving the lights on and running the battery empty. Well, I think that's also a good observation. Now in my case, I prefer to be able to use the lights even without the contact key. So that's why I did it this way. Another good comment was, why don't you install a searchlight in the back of the tractor, because that's where you're going to need light when you attach things in the dark. Yes, that's also possible, and then you add a switch and add the cabling. You can add as much as you want, to be very honest, on this tractor. And then finally there was one more comment saying, well, it's good to run an additional wire into the wiring loom to the back of the tractor, one used for grounding, because sometimes grounding can be pretty poor on those tractors. So, and yes, you're right, you can do that as well. And in fact, there's other things you can do. You can also hook up an attachment in the back for a trailer, for instance, if you need the lights on the trailer. And then you're going to have that ground connection. So lots of additional options. It all depends if you're using those or not. So in this video, we're going to run a cable from the back of the tractor to the rear wheels, to the left and the right, where the fender will be. And then we connect it to the cables on the fender. But also we have a joint junction box right here that will then have a cable going to the front of the tractor to the dashboard. And we're going to run the cable through this steel tube here, which is going all the way back to the junction box in the back. And in the front we'll come out with a cable with a connector we still have to create that we can attach actually then to the dashboard. So the things I'm going to use is a connection terminal for the back. We're going to use some connectors, and these are the connectors, because that way I can disconnect the dashboard from the rear wiring loom, just like you've seen on the front wiring loom. And these typically come in a set of 2. So you can see you can actually put those together very easily, like so. They are keyed. They come with a bunch of spades, male and female, so you need to insert that into those connectors. And then we're going to run up actually what we call a trailer cable, which is a multi-vane cable. So these are the things we're going to use, and I'm going to start to prepare this. This is pretty easy. You strip the wire, you put the wire on these spades, just like you do for all other spades. Squeeze it together and then slide it into the connector, and then you're done. That's all there is to it. So once you've got the wires all stripped and you know which wire you want to use for what purpose, then just put the connectors up, or the spades. Nothing really special, it's always the same standard method. Now on these pliers you will find areas to squeeze these spades together for insulated and non-insulated positions. So I'm going to use now first of all the non-insulated one, and then squeeze it together. And that's all you need to do, really. There's not a lot more to it than that. There we go. See? Oh, maybe I should have done it in the other position, the 2.5, because you do it on the right size, right? There we go. All right, that's done. That's number one. This wire might be a little bit too long, so we will cut some off. Oops. Let's take the spade, place it in there, slide it through, and use the pliers to squeeze it together. So now that we have the connector hooked up, we can now run the cable through the tube, because one side of the cable is not terminated yet. So let me run that through. And we pick it up on the other side. And as you can see, my cable, I left it long enough so that I can correct it wherever I need to correct it. Now you don't want to cut your cables too short, because you want to have the ability to connect them easily to each other underneath the dashboard. So I have connected the other connector onto the cable already, and I have actually the mating part, and as you can see, I labeled what is what, so I know exactly which cable is going to go where. Because now I need to cable in this connector into the dashboard, and for that I'm going to use separate wire. I have different colors here, as you can see. So this is what we're now going to use to connect it up to the relevant points onto the dashboard. And then we hook it up to this connector. So this is not very hard. We just need to cut the proper length of cables, make sure it's long enough. So I wired in all the cables for the rear lights, and also I hooked up the tachometer cable, because otherwise it's more difficult to get to it. So now it's a bit easier. And now we're going to move the dashboard onto the tractor. And then we look at the connectors. Loosened up the steering column, so it's a bit easier to get to it. So let's see if we can get the dashboard on. All right, hopefully I'm not too much in the way, and we'll see. This is going to be a little bit of fiddling, but it shouldn't be too bad, especially since I have removed the steering wheel. All right, now all I need to do now is to put the screw in. So I connected the tachometer cable, and I still have to tighten that up with a wrench, but we'll do that later. And we have a whole bunch of cables still laying around. This is the front wiring loom. We need to connect this to the loom coming from the dashboard, but as you can see, this is still pretty long. This is the horn, so we need to feed quite a bit of cable still through. And the red one, well, that's the one for the rear lights. So we need to connect all that up together now, and to make sure we have a good and proper cable installation. So I'm going to route these cables now, and once I'm done, I'll show it to you. So I routed the cables and reinstalled the steering column, and I was just placing it back in place and locking down those 4 bolts. I think that the dashboard looks quite alright, and I know the steering wheel is not white. I went for a black one because the white one will get dirty anyway, especially if you're going to use the tractor for working. But yes, maybe I do change it later with a new steering wheel, because it's a little bit cracked and I don't have one available right now, so we will probably replace it. So the next thing we're going to do is to change the float in the gas tank, terminate the cable which is going to the back of the tractor, so in other words putting that white connector on. And then we're going to put the bonnet up and the front lights, and then finally at the end I'm going to put the rear fenders up. You might remember from a previous video that I talked about the float, that I was going to replace it, but that I couldn't because the fuel level was too high in the gas tank, and I have now drained the fuel, and now we can actually remove it. Releasing these little nuts, and it's an 8 mil. And hopefully we don't need to disconnect the return of the diesel, but we'll see. If we have to, we'll have to, so then we have no choice, but I hope we don't have to. Let's see if we can prime it off with a small screwdriver, and that's coming out very easily. No wonder it doesn't work. There's no more float on it at all. So what I've done to make this float fit is actually bend this edge here. So this metal bar, I just give it a 90 degrees twist. And now things should actually work and fit. Let's see. See, now I can lock this up and everything is fine. And the float will do its job. And all what's left to do now is to connect the wires going to the dashboard. So that's a ground wire and the sensing wire, which will be on that brass connector there, and we'll do that in a second. Hook this up. The bonnet is a heavy piece. There we go, the bonnet is on. That was quite heavy. And there is a left and a right light, so they are marked, see that? Otherwise the beam won't be right. Just need to get the nut up now in the back. Now I'm not going to align the beams yet, right now. That's for later. But at least I want to make sure that the lights are fixed and that they work. So now let's put the new emblem up. And I know it's not really electrical work, but it's all part of the assembly. And here is that clip that goes in the back. So let's see how we can best do this. Maybe like so, and then hold it. It's a bit spring loaded. There we go. So we've got our new nice emblem up. I have connected both the lights, and there wasn't a lot to it. You've seen the wiring loom that came from the dashboard all the way to the front. That was the white and blue cable for the high beam, and I also connected the low beam or the dim lights and a ground, and then I put the grill up. So now let's see if it works. Well, that seems to be all right. So now it's time for this connector here. I already put the connector up, which is going to the back of the tractor, where it will connect actually the lights of the fender and the blinkers. And this is the cable coming from the dashboard that has to mate into this connector. So now I need to put a white connector onto this one. I have used some heat shrink socks, I call them, to protect the cable. I still have to warm it up so it will shrink. And I'm going to do that first, and then we'll put all these little spades up on the right spot on the connector. And you've seen on how we connect these spades before, and then I'm going to plug it in, and then it will work at the end of the tractor. All right. So, I'm going to strip the wires, and then we go into connect the connectors on there. And that shouldn't be that hard. Take the pliers and in the right spot. And I think this is actually a 2.5. It's a little bit fiddling. There we go. And squeeze it together. That's all it takes. I marked the connectors and the cables so I cannot misplace it, and I think that's important to make sure that everything is in the right spot. So let's hook that up. And we can connect the two together and we should be good to go. So I'm just going to have a quick look if everything is all right. Blue, blue, red, red. Yeah. So I got one fender installed and we still need to install the light on it. I also ran the cables that are coming from the wiring loom that we brought back to the back of the tractor and the junction box. I have 2 wires for the right hand side and 2 wires for the left hand side. Where's my other one? It's dangling out there somewhere. Here it is. So now we need to connect them to the fender cabling, which is still in the back here. That's still the original cabling. That was still all right. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side, of course. And now I'm going to first install that fender and then we hook up the lights. So I'm going to put the fender up, and these are heavy. So before I do so, I'm going to put some protective cloth on my tractor where I painted the chassis, because I don't want that to be all damaged just because I'm sliding on the fender. So that would not be good with it. Well, these fenders are really heavy, and it's better to do it with 2 people than alone, because alone it's tough. But I'll have to do it because I'm on my own, so I have no choice. Okay, it's coming. Let's see, where this is stuck. All right. Well, it's in place and it's pretty tough. So now that the fenders are installed on the tractor, I can actually start installing the lights. And now I have new lights for the back, but I don't have new lights for the front part of the fenders. And I like to reuse the old lens caps. Now this one is a blinker cap, which I actually cleaned up. This is how it looked like before, and you can see all the paint that's on it. So I got the paint off, and I'm going to show you on how you can get the shine back on that. Now it depends a bit on the plastic, so you will have to check it. The same thing is true for the red lens cap. See how shiny that is compared to the original one with all this kind of paint on it. And the only tool I'm going to use for that is a polishing tool, but also a blade, a very sharp razor blade. And I'm just going to scrape off that paint gently on the side, not to get into the plastic, and then I'm going to start polishing it. I also use some acetone to clean it, but you got to be very careful. Don't use a lot, and try it first on an old piece, because sometimes acetone will affect the plastic caps depending on what material they are made of. So I'm going to start with scraping off that little bit of paint, and it's a bit of a tedious job to do, but it really works well. I'm going to try to do this, guys, without being too much in the way. And try to get off as much as you can. So I'm going to get all this paint off now, and then I show it where I am ending up with. So now I'm going to clean this with a little bit of acetone. And again, I said you got to be careful with acetone, because sometimes it can affect the plastic and sometimes it does not. I tested those before and it has no effect on it. So that's good. So let me try to clean that paint off. Now most of the time you're going to be able to get the paint off. Now to polish this, I'm using a polishing wheel, and this is my Corrose, and then the other wheel is my fine wheel, and I have some cutting paste that I put on there. This is the rough one, so I'm going to apply it to this wheel here, and then the fine one, which is the white one, will actually go to the other wheel. So let us start and see what it does. Now I'm always polishing on the lower side of the wheel. All right, So now I'm going to use it on the other wheel. And that should be it. So let's clean it up and see. And I think they turned out quite all right. So the way I cleaned them is by using a razor blade. Scrape off the paint as much as you can. Don't get into the plastic. Then take some acetone, but try it first on a piece of lens, because some lenses are made of different plastic and they can actually melt when you put acetone on. Take the remaining part of the paint off and then polish it on a polishing wheel. You might as well try some very fine steel wool. That works as well. So next is installing the lights, and therefore I'm going first of all place this rubber seal on the bottom, feed my wires through it. There we go. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that it's really aligned. Now there's already holes in it where the bolts come through from the light. Let me feel where that is in the back. That feels all right. So now I will mark this, make sure it's straight, and we're going to paint it. And let me use a marker so I can mark where these bolts should go. That's one. And now we drill the second hole. And that's where it's supposed to sit. And of course I still have to fit the rubber first. Okay, so let's see. The blinker is on the right hand side. So I need to hook the blinker up, which is the green and white one. Lights are the red one, and that's the choice you make on colors of cables in the back here, because these cables were actually on the tractor. Put that rubber properly up. All right. Okay, and let's see where the holes are. There we go. And this is how we need to fit it. So we're going to fit a 21-watt light bulb where the blinker is, and a 5-watt light bulb where the normal tail light is. There we go. That's it. So let's see if the blinker is working. And that seems to be working just fine. So let's check the lights. And that looks all right too. Okay, so it's time to close it up. Make sure you have a good ground. And now we can put up the covered lights. So this is going to be a running light, basically. So I just need to connect that up to the ground. And then, of course, the power lead. So let's see if I put the power on or the lights on, if it lights up. And it does, so that's good. So now we can install that with a proper cap, lens cap. That's the lens cap that we remember, these ones that we have been polishing, and that should go on like this. I just need to find the little screw now, then we should be good to go. Need to get the other screw for the other side, but let's see if the light still works. And it does. Okay, so now we do the blinker light. It's the same methodology. Get it in there properly and put the glass up, or the lens. And again, this is a recovered lens. And I'm just gonna connect one side because I want to make sure that it works. So let's see if it works. Put the blinker up. Yeah, that works. That's good. And now I can put the second screw up. And this side is done. And then I'll do the other side. And then we do the final connections underneath the tractor where we need to connect all the cables together. And that will be it. And this tractor is completely finished. Oops, not very smart to hit the paint. To finish it all up, I connected the cables coming from the fenders, the lights, to the cable that we run before the wiring loom that was going to the back side of the tractor, right? So what I called the trailer cable. And that's it. So we almost finished. And here is the 990 Selectomatic all completed. New lights, new stickers, new paint. A lot of work was done. We repainted the complete engine. We did all the wiring looms all over again. We got great new tires on them. Even the old lights turned out to be quite all right. I'm kind of surprised how nice they became. But if you work hard enough and you clean things, you can recover a lot of stuff. The rear fenders. We also did a lot of work on the lifting arms. We replaced a lot of the pens, even the holes. We drilled them out, put bushes in. So this tractor is almost ready now to get the new attachment. We still have one more problem on this David Brown, and that's the vacuum switch on the hydraulic system. I noticed that the sensor isn't working, so the yellow light on the dashboard is always on. So I will have to order a new one, but that's about the only thing which is left. All the rest is just working like a champ. And this baby starts like a champ. And for the moment, the series on the David Brown is kind of complete. I might do one or more videos on some other small things where I want to adjust maybe some play on the front axle, little things like that. But you'll see that coming out because I still need to continue with Old Rusty.